Please welcome my new friend and yours, Olivia Reingold.
Hi, everyone. You will have to excuse me. I am probably going to have to drink this whole glass of water. I had no idea Nevada was this dry. And anyway, happy almost birthday to Faye. Of course. Okay, so the first thing I have to say is thank you. Thank you for being here today, for coming out to this wonderful restaurant, to see old friends. Thank you. To see old friends, women you're helping make a difference with. And for inviting me, a half-Jewish millennial flown in from the Upper West Side who, sure, knows about say bars, the Hora, and finding the Afikomen, but very little else to say when it comes to Judaism. So I have nothing smart to say about this thing. You will not hear me make a single Torah reference today. But I do know one thing. The Jewish people are being sorely mistreated by the world right now, and in a heartbreaking turn of events that has come to include our own neighbors. These are Americans we thought shared our commitments to tolerance, truth, and courage. I thought we cared about the downtrodden. I thought our nation was above the impulses of a bully. I figured we were different, the first and only nation in the world which, although flawed, always returned to a simple yet radical principle: to love our neighbors not in spite of their differences, but arguably because of them. That is not what I've seen since October 7th, or rather, since October 8th, which is when I covered my first anti-Israel rally. As the country still counted its dead, dozens of teenagers had shown up outside the Israeli consulate in New York City, not even to protest Israel yet, just to celebrate the violence of Hamas. What do you make of yesterday's attack? I remember asking a man who said he was from Jordan. Well, it's always sad when people are dying, he told me, but then he started smirking. But I'm proud of them too, he said of Hamas. His cavalier attitude has proven not to be a fluke, but the defining posture of the anti-Israel movement. Since then, I've covered nearly 24 anti-Israel rallies across the country. I've embedded in an Ivy League encampment, gone undercover at 2 conferences run by terrorist-linked operatives, and even broken bread with a chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine, while wearing a wire. Okay, I actually was wearing 2, but we don't need to talk about that. The point is, I've taken an honest look at the anti-Israel movement in America. I've spoken with their leaders, including organizers who I assume are being watched by the FBI. Or at least I hope they are, because to be frank, they scare me. And their beliefs are increasingly indistinguishable from that of the jihadist groups they openly defend and not support. I've heard what they joke about, how they think it's funny that one of the professors is, quote, freaking out about anti-Semitism. I've lent a pen to a guy in a meeting before all the other participants, including a man who identified as a journalist, started chanting, "Death to America," then "Death to Israel," first in English, then in Farsi. I've spent 3 hours trapped in a lounge at Columbia to attend a movie showing that quote, Zionists were barred from. When Lizzie George Griffin, a Columbia student, organized the event, she sent out the invite along with this message, quote, "When I say the Holocaust wasn't special, I mean that. Israelites are the Nazis." There was a time when I was open to their message. I figured, there's Israel, there's Palestine, it's complicated, what do I know? But then I wanted to know. So I listened to debates on YouTube, read the books that everyone recommends, and interviewed activists on all sides of the issue. When I began to understand what each side actually alleges the other has done, because there is no doubt that both sides have legitimate grievances, it was clear as day. Whatever sins Israel has committed, it does not deserve this. It does not deserve people in the streets running rabid with anger, calling the only Jewish nation in the world a genocidal terrorist, and racist state. From where I stand, Israel is long due for some sympathy, now more than ever. But instead, I've watched as the young, the children of Arab immigrants who understand this to be a religious struggle, and the clueless white liberals disrupt subway cars, pour red paint down monument steps, and spit on the face of Jews, all in the name of what they call anti-Zionism. To them, this behavior isn't civil unrest, it is liberation. As the now famous tweet by Najma Sharif Alawi, a writer for Teen Vogue, said, "What did y'all think decolonization meant? Vibes, papers, essays, losers?" That tweet was sent out on 12:12 p.m. on October 7th. On October 7th, the blood was not yet even dry at the Nova Music Festival and communities like Kibbutz near Oz. Her message is surprisingly instructive, though. Forget the academic jargon, that last word is what matters. Losers. They want us to feel like losers, like no one will eat with us, wave to us, or even hire us if we let it be known that yes, we believe that Israel has the right to exist. A certain faction of the movement is not afraid to get a little physical, to maybe intimidate you to the point where you worry about getting hurt. But most of the anti-Israel zealots are like Najma. They just want you to know that you're the town pariah. I know what that feels like, because I have been swarmed by both online mobs and in-person ones. Last June, I showed up to Union Square to cover a protest on a clear day. It was beautiful, finally warm enough to ditch my jacket. But instead of heading to Central Park, hundreds of activists showed up that day to protest a rescue mission by Israel. A rescue mission that saved 4 hostages. 4 hostages held in densely populated Gaza in an apartment building. Sadly, at least 100 Palestinians died that day. And to the crowd that showed up, that made the whole thing despicable. I'd been there for about 30 minutes when a man with a Hezbollah headscarf noticed my free press bag. "Zionist!" he shouted. "She's a Zionist!" He pointed at me, jumping up and down. The crowd rushed in. No one cared to ask me what I stand for. They just swarmed me. Strangers shoved me. They pushed me. A girl yanked my notebook out of my hands and stomped on the pages. Dozens of phones were in my face, filming me. A protester even read my name off of my press badge, so they started chanting, "Olivia, go to hell," instead of "Israel, go to hell." Amidst the chaos, I remember looking at one of the girls who'd been shouting "baby killer" in my face. She was holding up a keffiyeh so that I couldn't see the rest of the protest. Her arms must be tired, I remember thinking. They turned doing this when I told them I wasn't leaving. This was a public park, I said. And you are not kicking me out of a public park, not more than 60 years after the Civil Rights Act. So we just stood there. Whenever we made eye contact, she would almost snarl with disgust. Sometimes I take out my phone to try and take some notes, and she'd shove her camera in front of my screen to try and capture what I was writing. But I decided to look at her. Maybe I was bored, maybe it was a Hail Mary, but I turned to look at her. I wanted to connect with her on an almost primal level, as if to say, I mean you no harm. And all of this is a little silly, right? So I gave her a smile and I actually meant it. She was frazzled. For a moment, the hatred felt more forced, theatrical. I walked away thinking that maybe I had gotten through to her, if only for a moment. But then later, I learned that after harassing me, they headed to Wall Street to accost survivors of October 7th, who were there that day visiting the Nova Music Festival exhibit. I'd like to think that maybe that girl went home before it reached the next stage of depravity, but probably not. After that, I started researching knife and bulletproof clothing. They call themselves anti-war protesters, and yet they are the only assignment that's ever made me wonder if I should carry mace. It's true that I only cover the most radical faction of this movement, but since October 7th, they have shifted the discourse towards their illness. The average anti-Zionist in America now believes Israel is committing a genocide. It is not uncommon to say that the Jewish nation is a racist apartheid state. And when I recently made small talk with a Columbia student at the airport, I was reminded that the average participant in this movement is now also skeptical over whether Jews are really indigenous to the land. The Palestinians, she told me, are the native ones, as if there could only be one. The result is that the Venn diagram between what a random college activist believes and the creed of a Hamas member is looking more like a single circle every day. It is as if the college activists don't know they are parroting Hamas, that the terrorists they call resistance fighters don't use the word Jew either. They say Zionist. Who said this? A Jewish Voices for Peace activist in a watermelon kibbutz or Hamas? Quote, Hamas does not wage a struggle against the Jews because they are Jewish, but wages a struggle against the Zionists who occupy Palestine. It was Hamas. That's from the latest version of its charter. What about this one? The Zionist movement, which was able, with the help of Western powers, to occupy Palestine, is the most dangerous form of settlement occupation. You get it now. Even though it sounds ripped from the mouth of an Ivy League student, it's Hamas. I always thought that bigotry would be easy to spot, that it was unsophisticated name-calling or insults. But over the past year or so, I have learned that no, this is anti-Semitism. It is a hate disguised as a logic, so that even the bigot can tell themselves, I don't hate Jews. Jews are just the ones who killed Christ, or kidnapped children, or insert their chosen lie. This makes their hatred feel factual. How can it be bigotry if it's a logical conclusion based on the facts? And it always cloaks itself in the most fashionable clothes of the day. What does a society hate most? Racists? Colonizers? Then that is what they will label the Jews. Even the Nazis claim to have their reasons. Jews, they said, were capitalists, communists, and perhaps, worst of all, Zionists. Yes, they had a problem with that too. America's youth has been sucked into this delusion, along with even some members of Congress. So what can be done about it? How do you wash away the bigotry that the well-intentioned believe is not hatred at all, but justice and morality at work? How do you convince a generation that they are flirting with Holocaust denial, 2 seconds away from questioning the Auschwitz death toll, or wondering out loud about Jewish supremacy, as some of my own friends have done behind closed doors recently? The truth is that I don't know. But if there's one thing I've learned this year, it's that the most radical weapon we have right now is moderation. There is nothing more disarming in this moment than a fair and honest moderate. Someone who is human enough to acknowledge the suffering of the Palestinians, yet remain firm that we have a right to safety, security, and the land of Judea too. They out themselves with their rapid extremism. The best thing we can do is to remain civil, yet strong defenders of our people. And that is why I am so grateful to the women in this room here today, because you are all helping empower the next generation of Jewish women and girls who will carry on the torch. Everyone in this room has no illusions about the ugliness of these times. And yet all of you showed up today daring to dream of a brighter future anyway. It does not always have to be this way, and it won't be if we educate and inspire our youth. Women like you are why they say that the arc of history bends towards justice, because you make it so. You are building a future where your daughters never have to wonder if their safety depends on your silence. And that gives me hope. So once again, thank you. Thank you, Jewish Nevada, and the women building a strong and unafraid future for the Jewish community in beautiful Las Vegas, which I have come to really love, and beyond. Thank you.
Olivia, we are blown away by your bravery and commitment to ensuring that people are aware of the evils of anti-Zionism on all levels. Thank you for sharing your impactful story and spending time with all of us today.